Welcome back to the channel, and today we are getting into a story that has two parts, and the way those two parts connect is what makes this whole thing so satisfying to talk about. Because on the surface, you have two separate news items. One is a man gushing about how incredible Jungkook is after meeting him in person, and the other is an announcement that Jimin and Jungkook are both going to appear as guests on that same man's variety show. But when you put those two things side by side and look at the timeline, the sequence of events, and the details of what was actually said and what actually happened, the word that keeps coming to mind is not coincidence. The word that keeps coming to mind is destiny. And we are going to talk about all of it today. Let us start at the beginning, because context is everything, and the first part of this story is genuinely remarkable on its own before we even get to the second part. The person at the center of all of this is Chu Sung-hoon. If you are not already familiar with who he is, here is what you need to know. Chu Sung-hoon is one of the most recognizable figures in Korean mixed martial arts. He is a former professional MMA fighter with a career that spanned multiple organizations and produced some of the most memorable moments in Asian combat sports history. He competed at a level that required not just physical gifts but an extraordinary degree of mental toughness, discipline, and dedication. He is someone who has been in the ring with some of the toughest athletes in the world and has faced down pressure that would make most people fold completely. He is not naive. He is not easily impressed. He is not the kind of person who throws around superlatives carelessly, because when you have lived the kind of life that competitive martial arts demands, you develop a very clear sense of what genuine excellence actually looks like. You have seen too much to be fooled by surface-level charm or manufactured charisma. You know the real thing when you encounter it. Which is exactly why what Chu Sung-hoon said about Jungkook after meeting him in person carries the weight that it does. This was not a fan talking. This was not someone who had been following BTS for years and had built up an emotional investment in the members. This was a hardened professional athlete, a man whose career was built on the ability to read people and situations accurately under extreme pressure, encountering Jungkook for the first time and coming away with a reaction that he clearly felt compelled to share publicly. And what he said was not qualified or hedged or carefully managed. It was immediate, it was direct, and it was total. Chu Sung-hoon described meeting Jungkook in person and being genuinely surprised by what he found. He said that when he saw Jungkook in real life, he was struck immediately by how handsome he was, not in the way that idol visuals are often described, as a kind of manufactured or styled attractiveness, but in a way that felt genuine and immediate and almost disarming. He described Jungkook as polite, as a nice person to talk to, as someone who eats well and drinks well, small details, but significant ones, because they are the kind of details that you only notice when you are actually paying attention to a person as a human being rather than as a celebrity or a performer. He said Jungkook was fun to talk to. He said talking to him felt natural and real. And then he said something that became the line that everyone repeated afterward, the line that sent ARMY into an absolute frenzy of pride and emotion. He said there was no downside. He looked for a flaw, he looked for the thing that would bring Jungkook back down to earth and make him seem more ordinary, and he could not find it. And his conclusion was simple and absolute: Jungkook is perfect. A beautiful face, a handsome face, a brave face, and so much charm that it almost did not seem real. Now, pause for a moment and really think about the source of that statement. This is Chu Sung-hoon. A man who has stood across from opponents in a fighting cage and looked into their eyes under the most intense possible circumstances. A man whose entire professional existence was built around the ability to find weakness, to identify the crack in someone's armor and exploit it before they could exploit yours. That is what competitive martial arts is at its core, a constant search for the flaw, the vulnerability, the opening. And this man, applying that same instinct to his encounter with Jungkook, came away saying he could not find one. There was no downside. There was no flaw. There was just perfection. For ARMY, this moment was electric for reasons that go beyond simple fan pride. Because ARMY has been saying things like this about Jungkook for years. They have been talking about his talent, his dedication, his physical gifts, his warmth, his humor, his loyalty, his voice, his dancing, his everything, for as long as BTS has been a group. And while that love and that recognition is genuine and deeply felt, it can sometimes be dismissed as the natural bias of a devoted fanbase. But when a professional MMA fighter with no stake in the K-pop industry and no reason to exaggerate sits down and says independently, unprompted, that Jungkook is flawless, that is a different kind of validation. That is someone from entirely outside the world of BTS looking at Jungkook with fresh, unbiased eyes and arriving at exactly the same conclusion that ARMY arrived at years ago. There is something deeply satisfying about that. There is something that feels like having the thing you have always known confirmed by the most unlikely possible source. And if the story ended there, it would already be a great story. A beloved MMA fighter meets one of the world's biggest pop stars, is completely won over by him, and shares his honest reaction with the world. That is a good story. But the story does not end there. Because what happened next is what transforms this from a good story into something that feels almost cinematic in the way it unfolds. Not long after Chu Sung-hoon's words about Jungkook began circulating online and generating the kind of attention that genuine, unscripted praise always generates in the BTS universe, an announcement landed that stopped ARMY in their tracks. Jimin and Jungkook, together, as a pair, the combination that fans know and love as Jungkook, were confirmed as guest stars on Chu Sung-hoon's variety show. The show was set to drop on YouTube on April 2nd at 6:30 p.m. Korea Standard Time, which translates to 4:30 p.m. Western Indonesian Time for Indonesian fans who were watching the clock very carefully. And the moment that announcement went live, the internet did what the internet always does when something involving BTS and someone who has just publicly praised a BTS member comes together in this way, it absolutely lost its mind. Because think about what this combination of events actually represents. First, Chu Sung-hoon meets Jungkook and is so genuinely impressed that he feels compelled to talk about it publicly in terms that are almost embarrassingly effusive by the standards of a tough professional athlete. He says the man is perfect. He says there is no downside. He says the charm is overwhelming. And then it emerges that not only is Jungkook going to appear on his show, but Jimin is coming too. The man went looking for a flaw in Jungkook and could not find one, and as if the universe decided to reward him for his honesty, he ended up getting both Jungkook and Jimin on his show at the same time. In what world is that a coincidence? In what version of events does that sequence of things happen by accident? Let us talk about what Chu Sung-hoon's variety show actually is, because understanding the format matters for understanding why this appearance is such a significant thing. Variety shows in Korea occupy a completely different cultural space than their equivalents in Western entertainment. They are not just talk shows where celebrities sit on a couch and promote their latest project. They are immersive, chaotic, warmly human productions that are specifically designed to strip away the carefully managed public personas of their guests and reveal the real people underneath. The best Korean variety content, and there is a long history of genuinely great Korean variety content, creates moments of authentic connection and authentic laughter that feel nothing like performance. The guests are put in situations that require them to be spontaneous, to react in real time, to be genuinely funny or genuinely moved or genuinely vulnerable in ways that no amount of PR training can fake. And the audience always knows the difference between a guest who is performing and a guest who is truly present. Chu Sung-hoon as a host brings something very specific to that format. His background as a fighter gives him a directness and a lack of pretension that is genuinely refreshing in a hosting context. He is not trying to manage the conversation or control the narrative, he is just there, fully present, reacting to whatever is in front of him with the same honesty that made his comments about Jungkook so striking in the first place. That quality of honest, unfiltered engagement is exactly the kind of energy that brings out the best in guests like Jimin and Jungkook, who are themselves enormously skilled at being genuinely present and genuinely themselves in front of a camera. And when you put Jimin and Jungkook together in that kind of environment, what you get is something that ARMY knows very well, a dynamic that is warm, playful, teasing, deeply comfortable, and almost impossibly charming to watch. Jimin and Jungkook have known each other since they were teenagers. They have been through everything together, the trainee years, the debut, the global rise, the military service, the comeback. Their friendship has been forged in conditions that most people never experience, under pressures that most people cannot imagine, and what has come out of that shared history is a bond that is completely natural and completely genuine. When they are together in front of a camera, that naturalness translates into content that feels like you are watching two real friends be themselves, and that, in the world of variety television, is absolute gold. The trailer alone was apparently enough to send people into complete hysterics. Reports from fans who saw the early preview described scenes of genuine comedy, with one moment involving what can only be described as an ear-picking incident that apparently had people laughing so hard they could barely breathe. That is the kind of detail that tells you everything about the energy of the recording, because that kind of spontaneous, absurd, completely unscripted humor only happens when the people involved are genuinely comfortable and genuinely having fun. Nobody plans an ear-picking moment. That is just what happens when real people interact in a real way and a camera happens to be there to catch it. But beyond the comedy and the chaos and the undeniable entertainment value of watching Jimin and Jungkook be themselves in a variety setting, there is something more significant happening in this moment that deserves to be acknowledged. The appearance of two BTS members on Chu Sung-hoon's show is a data point in a much larger story about where BTS is right now as a cultural force and what the post-military era of their career actually looks like in practice. BTS just came back. They performed at Gwanghwamun Square in front of thousands of people and millions of viewers streaming online. They released new music. They are about to embark on what promises to be one of the biggest world tours in K-pop history. Every move they make right now is being watched with enormous attention by fans, by the industry, and by the broader entertainment world. And the choices they make about where they show up, who they collaborate with, and how they present themselves to the world all carry meaning. The fact that Jimin and Jungkook chose to appear on Chu Sung-hoon's show, a platform rooted in Korean sports culture, hosted by a figure who represents a very different corner of the entertainment world than K-pop, says something about the kind of artists they are and the kind of connections they want to make. They are not limiting themselves to the expected promotional circuit. They are showing up in places that feel genuine and human and real, in front of audiences who might not have sought them out through traditional K-pop channels but who will encounter them through this show and be completely won over by who they actually are as people. That is exactly what happened with Chu Sung-hoon himself. He encountered Jungkook, presumably not as a devoted fan seeking out a BTS experience, but as a person in the same space who interacted with him as one human being to another, and what he found was someone so genuinely extraordinary that he felt moved to talk about it publicly in the most effusive terms he could find. That kind of organic, authentic discovery is more powerful than any amount of calculated promotion. It reaches people who would never be reached by a music video or a concert announcement, and it says something about the person being discovered that no amount of crafted messaging could ever replicate. And now those same people who heard Chu Sung-hoon talk about Jungkook in those terms are going to watch the variety show and see Jimin and Jungkook together, being themselves, laughing and joking and showing the world exactly who they are when the performance is over and the real people remain. And some of those people are going to become fans. Some of them are going to go back and listen to the music for the first time. Some of them are going to understand for the first time what ARMY has been trying to explain to everyone around them for years, that this is not just about the music, and it is not just about the performances, and it is not just about the carefully constructed world of K-pop. It is about these specific people, these genuinely extraordinary human beings, who happen to also be world-class artists. Chu Sung-hoon said Jungkook was perfect. He said there was no downside. He said the charm was overwhelming. And then the universe, apparently agreeing with his assessment, decided to give him Jimin as well. Two of BTS's most individually compelling members, showing up together on his show, bringing their genuine friendship and their genuine humor and their genuine selves to a format that will let all of that shine without any interference. If Chu Sung-hoon thought Jungkook alone was perfect, he had absolutely no idea what was coming when the two of them walked through his door together. ARMY knew. ARMY always knows. And for everyone else, for the people who heard Chu Sung-hoon's words and felt curious, for the people who saw the announcement and wondered what the fuss was about, for the people who are only now beginning to understand what BTS actually is and who these members actually are, April 2nd was the moment of discovery. The moment where everything clicked. The moment where you stopped watching because you heard it was popular and started watching because you genuinely could not look away. That is the power of authenticity. That is what happens when real people encounter other real people and respond to them honestly. Chu Sung-hoon was honest about what he saw in Jungkook. And in return, the audience got to see what Chu Sung-hoon looks like when two of the most charismatic and genuinely lovable people on the planet walk into a show and remind everyone why they fell in love with BTS in the first place. Coincidence? Absolutely not. This was always going to happen. Some things are just inevitable. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a comment telling me which moment from the show surprised you the most, and subscribe if you have not already so you never miss what comes next. See you in the next one.